Hello.
Hello?
How are you? Oh, hang on. Am I on? Can you hear me?
You are. Yes.
This is
Hi.
these are the Orloff-Volinsky triplets. They're a rollerblading girl group from Eastern Europe.
Excellent.
Yes, they're wearing their new performance outfit.
They look lovely.
Yes. Yeah, I like the kind of variations on a theme. I know, they're crazy. It's what it is. So yes.
Well, that's what the Supremes used to do, you know?
Yeah. Well, these ladies, they sing, they have a very interesting song styling. I'll just put it.
I'll bet they do.
So how's everyone tonight?
Good.
Very well.
Good.
And you?
You know, it's been I'm so excited. I get my first vaccine on Saturday.
Yay!
You know, it fell out of the sky because I was thinking, oh, you know, because I'm not old enough and all of that. And I had there's a gal at FIT, her name is Sandra. They would call her the deep state. She's in the kind of long-term administration of the school, and she kind of knows everyone and everything. And she texted me this morning and said, can you talk? So yeah, I was at the gym. I said, you know, I can let me talk when I get home. So I called her back and said, so what's going on? And she said, are you planning on getting the vaccine? I said, well, yes, I am, but you know, I'm not old enough. And she said, you're an educator. And one of my former students, who's a friend of hers, manages one of the vaccine sites up in Harlem. And so they're setting it up. I was like, oh, so excited, so relieved. Yes.
Not to one up you, but I'm getting mine Friday morning.
Well, good for
and
you.
I just found out yesterday. So
yeah, you know, it's just you know, it feels like, hey, I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. Yes.
It really does make a difference.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I'm having some friends over on Friday because we've all been vaccinated.
Mm-hmm.
nice.
Well, you know, it's the little things.
Yeah, you know, and these are it's yeah. I was talking with someone yesterday, and I said, you know, one of the things that I really miss is just getting together with friends to go out for coffee. I know that sounds like the simplest thing in the world, but and you know, you know, people around the world are suffering in other ways, but you know, just the thing about getting to dress up and go out to dinner or you know, any of that sort of thing. So I'm just feeling like,
Grateful.
okay, that's coming. So it's a good thing. So okay, so this evening we're going to have the lesson, and then after the lesson, if you want to hang around, you know, several people here have kind of said, I kind of like to know who these other faces are on the computer. So you know, so we'll do the lesson, and then we'll hang out, and you know, everyone can kind of chat amongst themselves, and we can if that's agreeable. Okay, so we're going to start. This is Tassels. So I'm going to start with a gallery, and then from the gallery I'm going to go to making the single layer, the double layer, double layer tassels, and then finally it's going to be putting the bead cage on the tassel. Now that the bead cage thing is probably going to be a little more like lecture demo, but you can look at the video later, because I think that, you know, the handling of the tassels, that's going to eat up most of the time, but that's kind of where I'm planning on going with this evening. Okay. Okay then. So before we get started, are there any other questions, comments, requests, thoughts? No. Okay then. So let us proceed. There we are. That there. There. Okay. Hello, I'm Kenneth D. King, and this is my Tassels class. In this particular class, we're going to be making a single tassel, or I'm going to show you how to make multiple tassels, and I'm also going to show you how to make a beaded cage on a tassel. We're going to start with a gallery of different pieces that I have made in my career that show the use of tassels. Then we will progress to the single tassel. I will show you then how to put a bead waist on that tassel. I'll show you multiple layers on tassels. And the big finish will be making the bead cage. So let's get started. This video is a short gallery of tassels using pieces that I have created over my career. The first piece that you're looking at is an evening wrap. I call it the mask wrap. It's comedy and tragedy. The tassels give the ends of the wrap weight, and on the reverse of each of these masks is a zippered compartment for your compact, your lipstick, your cell phone, all of that sort of thing. So when you carry this wrap, you don't have to have a handbag. After that, this is a hat from the beginning of my career. I called it the Taj Mahal. And this was the first time I figured out that I could actually make tassels. When I was pricing tassels for this particular hat, I realized that they were far too expensive for my pocketbook at the time. And that is the real predecessor of all the tassels that come after. Moving along, this hat and muff, you can see the tassel on the end of the muff. This was, I was in a Tsarist Russian mood at this particular time. And you can see that the tassel can be quite ornate, which I rather like. Also here, the copper colored muff is another one of the muffs from this series, as is the red with the black bead mesh muff. These were made probably, I would say, 1987, 1988. Moving along, in the early career, I really liked making accessory pieces. The accessory pieces are beautiful, and you don't have to worry about them not fitting. So you can buy a handbag when you're 30, you can carry the handbag when you're 80. On this particular handbag, the photograph makes it look like it's gray. It's actually black on black, but to get any kind of detail in this photo, I had to flood it with light, which really changed the color. This photo is of one of my favorite models. Her name is Loretta. She is wearing another one of the evening wraps with the little zippered compartments, also with the embellished tassel. Right next to it is yet another one of the masks. Not a great photo, but you can see tassels again. And from here, this velvet wrap with the embellished ends that have little compartments on the ends. This is one of the pieces I traded for a car some years ago. This is a boa and a matching hat. You can see that there is a little zippered compartment. The fur on this is fox. I eventually changed it to fabric feathers. And this little video that I have following this is a closer look at the inside of that particular piece. Now you notice in the video, the black has gone a little bit red. This is something I've learned years later. When you're working with blacks, go with blacks that are blue-based rather than red-based, because red-based blacks turn over time. And this one here, this is another fox boa with the little zippered compartments and the tassels. Tassels give weight and movement to a piece. So it's a really nice way of finishing off something. Yet another piece. From here, I started, of course, making hats. These particular hats were hats for the store in Los Angeles called Maxfield that I sold to. This particular hat had the tassel in the back. When you are adding a tassel to a piece of work, you add the tassel at the very last. You can see the cords in the passementerie sort of bury into the tassel. So you plan on having those cords hanging loose, and then the final step on this hat after the entire hat is constructed is to create the tassel. Here's another hat, yet another tassel. And you can see the tassels can be beaded, they can be embellished. You can kind of go crazy with this. And this is something a little kooky to finish. This is a cuckoo clock. Yes, it is. I made the cuckoo clock. You can see the tassels. The tassels also hide the weights. The weights are what drive the clock. And yeah. So I just wanted to give you a little overview of the kinds of things you could do with tassels, or the kinds of things that I have done in my career. This is not exhaustive, but this is a greatest hits sort of thing. I hope you've enjoyed it. Now we're going to talk about materials and tools. So, questions? And yes, indeed, I traded the evening wrap and a bustier and skirt for my last car. It was a Volkswagen Cabriolet. She had the car. I said, I don't have any money, but I can make some things for you. Could you work a trade? And she said yes. And so I had no car payments. I made the outfit. I got the keys to the car. It was a good thing. So, questions?
How do you tell if you have a blue red or a blue?
A blue black or a red black.
Yes.
If you get sunglasses with sort of a brown lens, you can see it immediately. I have one pair of sunglasses that have kind of a brown lens. I got them from LA Eyeworks some years ago. And whenever I put those on, blue blacks will look black, red blacks will look brown. So, it's, some people have a trained eye and they can really spot it. But when I made that particular boa, that was early in my career and I didn't really understand yet, because red dyes are a little more unstable. That's why they turn brown over time. So just, a little tip to know. Okay. Okay. So now we're going to be doing materials, and we're going to be working on the single tassel first. So let us proceed.
Is that the shorter of the two?
Well, you would use the longer of the two.
The longer? Okay.
Yes. Okay. So let's see. Let me close this window here, because otherwise I'll get confused. Come on. Okay then, so here are the materials to make tassels. Here we have different colors of fringe. And we have a couple of different cords here. Now, this cord is what's called a twisted cord. Generally, these are taped before they're cut. Obviously, it comes in different colors, but we're not going to be using this twisted cord for our particular examples, but this is something you could use when making your tassels. So that's why I show it. This cord here, this is a cord called shoelace. It is about 1/4 inch in diameter. They come thicker, they come thinner, but this is the cord that we're going to be using for our examples. But again, this cord is called shoelace. To give you a close up, it's round. They call it shoelace. The fringe, this is called chainette fringe. And it's something you see quite a lot. Here is the fringe. It comes in a variety of lengths from very short 2 to 3 inches on up to 30 to 40 inches. It is rayon. It comes in a variety of colors. It also comes in white. You could dye it if you need to. And I'll talk in a minute about the different parts of the chainette fringe. But these are the materials that we're going to be using for our example. The fringe itself has different parts, and I like to define my terms, which I've kind of made up, so that when we're working through the lesson, you'll know what I'm talking about. This here, that is the foundation. It holds the strands together. These, of course, are the strands, and this white stitching will be removed later. That is just for shipping. When you're looking at the foundation, I call this the top edge of the foundation and this the lower edge of the foundation. And of course, like I said, we have the strands. Now, here is the chain stitch. And it's good to know how to unravel a chain stitch. Some people don't really know this. It bears repeating. So you can see there's a pear-shaped loop, and it makes a little point right there. That tells you the direction that the chain stitch will unravel. So what you want to do is to come in here and trim off some of the chain stitch. And then tug on a couple of the strands. Okay, now, see here, see that little tail there? That is what you're going to pick up. And then it will unravel. So now you know how to unravel a chain stitch. Next, I'll talk about the parts of the tassel. Here I have a tassel, and it's just good to show it so I can show the different parts of the tassel. Put it behind a white background so you can see it a little better. So here is the tassel. This is the cord. This I call the knob. This I call the waist. And then this is the skirt. So the different parts of the tassel: the cord, the knob, the waist, and the skirt. So I'm going to stop here for just a moment. Are there any questions? Because now we're going to start making the single tassel, and we'll be using the longer of the fringes for the single tassel.
When you're saying single, what are you referring to?
Okay, well,
How
single.
many times around, or?
Oh, no, the single tassel, which you saw in the, the tassel I was holding, the skirt has one layer. A double tassel, the skirt will have 2 layers of different lengths.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, so that's what I mean by single or double layer tassel. Okay. Okay.
Yep,
So
thank you.
so we will now we'll start. And I'll let this run until a point where everyone stops. We can, and then we can start construction. Start sewing the single layer tassel. I want to show you a little trick about cutting the fringe. Now you notice that this foundation is a little wider than the other foundation that I showed you earlier. it works the same for both this one and this one. This one is going to have a shorter knob at the end. This one will have a little more elongated knob, but this technique works for any fringe. For the single layer, we want to measure 16 inches of fringe. Now you can vary this, but it's just a good number to start out with. When you're cutting, you want to put a piece of tape over the end and cut down the center. It just works better. Keeps everything from unraveling over time. And then you follow this down. See, we have the 2 rows of chain stitch. So we're going to cut through the rows of chain stitch. And that then is how we separate our fringe. The next step, which I will do off camera, is we want to unravel the carrier stitches that hold the fringe at the other end. This is just going to complicate matters later. So you would unravel those like I showed you earlier. I'll be back here after I've done that. Next, we attach the fringe to the cord. Now, there are a couple of ways of doing this. For a thinner cord, you can tie a knot and then proceed with sewing on the fringe. Or if you're working on a thicker cord, such as a twisted cord where the knot is just going to be gigantic, you wouldn't tie a knot. So you have thinner cords, you get a knot; thicker cords, you don't. To begin with the thin cord, here we have our fringe. Now, to give you kind of a reference, the tassel is going to hang from here down. So this here would be attached to the piece that you're going to be adding the tassel to. So the first step is going to be whip stitching this end of the fringe, foundation end, to the cord. Now I'm using contrasting thread, obviously, because this is a demonstration so that you can see it. When you're sewing, don't be shy with the stitches. Fewer stitches are going to make for work that isn't quite so sturdy. Here, it doesn't have to be pretty, as you can see, but you just want the end of the foundation of the fringe stitched to the cord with the top edge of the foundation resting against the knot that you created. This is
Question.
I'm gonna stop at this point. So, questions?
Yeah, I have a question. Just want to verify what I'm seeing. So basically, because from our picture, the tassel is going to hang down to toward the right. You're sewing up first because
Yes,
you're going to flip it down.
exactly. That's correct. Yes,
That band becomes part of your knot.
that's correct. Absolutely. Yes. Okay, so I'm going to stop here for a moment.
I'm sorry, Kenneth, can I ask a question? How long does the cord have to be?
The cord, for your, for your sample, 7-8 inches. It doesn't have to be really long. Generally, like I said, when I'm planning on putting it on a particular piece, I'd leave about 7 or 8 inches hanging down. That way you can kind of adjust where that tassel actually drops down from the main piece. But for our example, 7 or 8 inches is fine.
Okay.
Okay.
So
Would you
7 or 8 inches from the knot?
Well, if you just cut 10 inches of cord, because we're going to be using on one end, we're going to make our single layer tassel. On the other end of that cord, we're going to make our double layer tassel. So you'll have 2 tassels on one piece of cord.
So,
Would you-
so you want that, but it's going to be this way, correct?
That's correct. Absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Would you repeat how long you cut the first piece of fringe?
Okay. The first piece of fringe, because the math here is that if you're going to get a knob that is roughly an inch to inch and a quarter thick, you want 16 inches of foundation.
Okay.
So you can kind of bring that up or down, but for our purposes to start out, 16 inches is going to be the number we're going to use. Okay. Okay. So
I'm sorry I was late. I got my timing mixed up. I'm so sorry.
okay. So you're gonna cut a piece of cord about 10 inches long, and you're gonna cut a piece of your longer fringe about 16 inches long.
Okay. I don't have any cord. I know. I'll use this. All I have is burlap.
Okay. It's called improvising.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's cord. It's technically cord.
Yes.
And we're using the longer fringe for the first one?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I love it that I actually was able to trade things for a car. It was a three-year-old Volkswagen Cabriolet. I had that car until I moved here to New York, and then I gave it to my sister. My favorite toy. People knew if the top was up, I was either sick or it was raining. See, I have a fondness for small convertible cars. I love them. Or
I
large
do too.
convertible cars. You know, I when I was in, was it high school? Yeah, it was high school. The summer before my senior year, I worked at Wendy's Old Fashioned Hamburgers, and this manager we had there had a white Eldorado convertible. I think it was a 73, a burgundy leather interior. It was like a big tuna boat. It was huge. And I used to bug him, oh, let me drive your car, let me drive your car, let me drive your car. And he never would. And then one day I was at work and he gave me the keys and he said, take the car for a week, bring it back, washed, waxed, and cleaned out. And my mother was like, where did you get this car? I said, well, I'm having it for the whole week. You know, and it was one of those things that it only dawned on me much later that he either was like trying to dodge the guy repossessing it, or maybe there was a divorce, you know, they were someone, you know, it was like he had to get it kind of off, you know, out of his purview for a week. But I had that damn car for a week and I put lots of miles on it. It gave me a fondness for convertibles.
I loved my little Miata. I had a little white Miata. That
Oh.
was my really my favorite, really my first brand new car, because I'd always had the old junkers. And I loved that little Miata. And I drove it until I was 7 months pregnant with Anthony. And then I couldn't get out of it. I could get into it, but I couldn't get out of it because it was so low. So I had to trade with my husband, who had a Honda Accord. I did not get the best end of this deal. He
Well,
loved that guy. And then he drove it for like 10 years.
I rented one once and they have fun written all over them.
It really was. It was a fun little car. It really
My
was.
mother had a friend named Vivian who was like Auntie Mame to me, and Auntie Mame, or Auntie Vivian as I called her, had a 1958 MGA convertible, black with red
Ooh.
interior.
Oh, nice.
And I had never seen a car like that. I lived in Kansas, and one summer evening, now Vivian, to give you a picture, bright red hair, freckles, chain smoked Territons when she wasn't smoking stogies, and she could get the Territon to stick on the lipstick. And she'd have an ash like that long, and my mother was always following her around with the ashtray. And you know, I remember one time asking my mom, like, how does she get that to stay like that? And she said, don't ask. So of course I did. And Vivian said, cheap lipstick, high wax content.
Oh, too funny.
Yeah, she wore mercurochrome orange lipstick and nail polish. And so she showed up one night with her good sunglasses and her leopard print chiffon scarf and this black MGA convertible. And, you know, she was smoking a stogie that night, and she, you know, honked on the horn. She yelled like, come on, Annie, let's go for a ride. And so my mom and my sister and I piled into this tiny little tin can of a car and went bouncing around the back roads of Salina, Kansas. And I thought I thought that this was the coolest thing in the world. So yes, if I ever had just bushel baskets of money to buy something foolish, it would be an MGA convertible, just because it was so much fun.
My dad, I guess before we kids were born, had Cadillac convertible black with red interior. He always said that was his favorite car.
Yeah. Well,
My dad had well, my brother also had an Austin Healey.
which one?
uh,
3000?
I don't, it was when he was 16 or 17, and he was born in 49.
Okay.
So,
Yeah. Hmm.
and my dad would buy an old MGA and rebuild it. And
Yeah.
so they had, and so I'm familiar with MGAs, MGBs, MGCs, and Austin Healey's.
Yes, we had an MGB when I was in high school, and this is a big grudge that I still hold against my older sister. She burned out 2 clutches, a set of brakes, and wrecked it in 6 months' time. And my mom said it's gone. And I was like,
Oh,
I was so
no.
close. I got to drive it once with my learner's permit. I was like, and to this day, I hold a grudge that she ruined it for me.
Kenneth, how far down do we sew? About an inch, did you say? I'm
Well,
sorry.
you just stitch the end of the foundation of the fringe to the cord.
Right. How far though? About an inch?
About an inch, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So okay, so now that question is asked, which tells me that we're ready to move on to the next step. So now we will continue. If you're working with the thicker cord, where tying a knot would make the knob too bulky, you can leave off the knot, but make sure that the end is taped. And it's quite a lot the same thing. So you're going to be stitching through, and you're going to be sewing the end of the foundation to the cord. And again, make sure that you don't get stingy on your stitches. The more you sew this, the more sturdy it's going to be, because there's nothing more disheartening than having a tassel pull off of the cord. Now you notice the tassel's going to hang here, but we've stitched the fringe upside down. As we go along, it'll make more sense why we do this. So we've secured this, and we're ready now for the next step. So we're back to our first example where we have the knot tied, and this is where we wrap the fringe with the foundation, the top edge of the foundation, resting against the knot. You can wrap it clockwise, counterclockwise, doesn't matter. The object is you want to make sure that the top edge of the foundation is roughly even as you're wrapping. Now, like I said, this is 16 inches of fringe. You can play with the length of fringe. The rule here is that the longer the fringe, the foundation of fringe, the thicker the knob of the tassel. And what I like to think is that the longer the strands of the fringe, the thicker the knob should be. I think it balances better. You have a little skimpy knob on a tassel with long fringes. It looks a little bit weak. Okay, so we have this all wrapped around the cord, and then here, first thing you want to do is to whip stitch a few times just to hold the end in place. Here, you want to stab the needle through several times, and when you're stabbing the needle through, really make sure you catch, and you can kind of feel it, make sure you catch the cord as you're stabbing the needle through. Again, more stitches are better rather than fewer. You notice I'm sewing with the double thread, so with the double thread is stronger. And so I'm going to use up all of this thread. And I can tie off for the next step.
Are you leaving the tape on there?
Oh yeah, that'll be inside the tassel, so you won't see it in the final product. Okay.
Yep, thanks.
Making the tassel where you had a thicker cord and you didn't have the knot, it would look exactly the same. So here, ready to turn this off. The next step is coming. So I'm going to stop here.
Question.
Yes.
When you're wrapping, are you wrapping tightly, loosely, or just moderate?
I like it fairly snug.
Also, you're not, as you wrap, you're not sewing in place. Is there a reason you don't sew as you wrap? You wait till the end?
What I find is that waiting until the end and sewing is just as strong as sewing it as you go.
Okay.
Sewing it as you go is a little more work for not any more benefit.
Okay.
Okay. Because see, when it's all said and done, I try to, I like to be as time motion efficient as possible. So, you know, I've tried it both ways, and really for the strength of the tassel, there's no improvement in quality.
Are you using your milliners still?
Yes, I love my milliner's needles.
Okay.
You know,
Thanks.
as a rule, you know, because I have other packets of needles like sharps and other things, but I like a long needle. I got used to that when I was, you know, sewing beads, because beading needles are rather long. So I just know that it works for me, and yeah, I have them, as you can see, in different sizes. So, are we all stitched through?
Nope.
Yes, no, maybe?
No,
Not
not
quite.
really.
Not quite. Okay. I'll give you another minute or so.
Is there a trick to not getting your fringe caught in the sewing?
I not really. I actually, what you could do is you could just hold all the fringe in one hand, kind of hold it out of the way, and then use the you know, sew with the other hand. I've seen some people will pin a piece of tissue paper around it to keep the fringes from getting into the stitches. For me, that's a little more work than I'd like to do. So, yeah.
There we go.
See, my mother used to say I was lazy, and I used to say, yeah.
Efficient.
Well, you see, I don't, you know, because there is enough work, you know, in making beautiful things, that you don't have to do work that you don't, you know, there, you don't have to do. And when I worked in window display, especially, I learned, don't put work where it doesn't show. You know, now, you know, you don't want to compromise the integrity of a garment, but, you know, there are certain things that I do that would not be regarded as completely, absolutely 100% couture techniques, but they look, you know, it turns into a pretty good garment. So, you know, it's just how I do it, because I come from window display. That is my training. That was my first career. Okay, so we're ready to continue.
Obviously, Susan Calgie hasn't used a ruler on your hands when you've sewn together.
Well, you see, what I love about, see, we do a sit and sew, and you know what is really kind of fun about it, we're both aiming at the same goal.
Yeah.
She was trained in a couture house. She, you know, if I want to know, okay, what is the absolute complete doctrine, perfect, this is the way you do it, she's the one I talk to. But again, I worked in window display and I had to sort of develop a whole slew of techniques, this being one of them, that served me and gave me what I needed and with the least amount of wasted time. So we come at the same thing. We come at it from different backgrounds. And so it is fun to see, like, there are ways I'll approach something, there are ways she approaches something. And even when we're there, like this summer, we had or it was in October, we had a gal who wanted to do, basically it was a Watteau back on this coat. And, Susan sent me a photo of it and she said, what do you think? I said, this is a flat pattern thing. Because see, I'm trained in flat pattern. She's trained in draping, again, two ways of getting the same thing. And so
Uh-huh.
it really was a flat pattern thing. So, but we both love, admire, and respect each other. And so it's all okay.
Well, my daughter lives about, I don't know, 45 minutes outside Baltimore. And
Uh-huh.
so I keep thinking, I really need to do that
You
sometime.
really need to do that. It's a lot of fun. Okay.
It's
Oh,
phenomenal.
it's so worth it. It's very fun.
Well, it is.
Kenneth, you're next.
Oh,
You're next.
Okay, very good. Okay, so now that we have stitched through the cords, the next thing is going to be tying off the strands against the main cord. Now that we have the foundation of the fringe stitched through several times, catching the cord, the next step is going to be cinching up the strands to eventually make the top of the tassel. What it's going to look like is I'm going to catch this anchor, a new thread, and again, double thread, double, 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 stronger. So what we'll do is we're going to wrap this around and see how when you wrap it around and pull it tight, that this thread drops down from the lower edge of the foundation. That is as it should be. And so what you want to do is you're going to tie it as tightly as you can. Then you anchor your thread, knot it off. So here we are. If you're a little worried about it, just make sure that this band of thread is roughly parallel to the lower edge of the foundation. It doesn't have to be dead parallel, but close. Okay, so that is your next step. Are we having fun?
Yeah.
So when I had asked you about the cord that time, when I had the cord that we used to make Roman shades with, I was thinking you were using the cord to wrap the fringe on the inside of the tassel.
Oh,
That's why it was white. And that's why, and then when you said, well, it wasn't thick enough. And I thought, God, how thick is this going to be? So I was completely confused. The good news is you save everything. You actually got a piece of a good size shoelace type of cord, which is the same color as the fringe
Well,
in
there
your
you go.
stash. Kind of scary.
Well, see, I have a small New York studio, so I don't have as large of a stash as other people. Someone said to me once, "Oh, I bet you have a fabulous stash." No, I don't.
Well, it's and when you do have room, and I've just kind of kept things, but I think, why do I keep all these pieces of things? Now I feel really good about it. So thank you for
Oh, well,
for
I'm
that.
glad.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, but what
Who
you
knows
do
where that
have,
even came
Kenneth,
from?
is all of New York to shop in.
This is true, and so that's why I don't really feel I have to,
Right.
because if I really need something, I can go out and get it.
Except during a pandemic.
Yeah, well, but the shops here in New York are open. You have to wear masks and all.
They did, yeah.
There was that time when it was all closed, and just the things I took for granted, like just running up to 38th Street to get a invisible zipper, was no, we couldn't do it. So I understood for the first time what my students were going through, because they were all in different parts of the country and couldn't get a lot of different materials. And, they were like, well, we can't get materials. And then I realized, okay, I have to order it from Amazon too. So I understood, like, okay, now I get it. So yeah.
I was so spoiled in Portland, Oregon, as Meredith can tell you, we used to have a lot of stores. We don't have as many now, but we could get everything,
It's not
right,
the
Meredith?
same.
And,
Yeah,
and
it's
it's
not the
not the
same now.
same. And now I'm on a little island in Rhode Island, and it's like there's one quilt shop, and that's it. It's
honestly, New York is different now than when I moved here.
yeah.
My husband was doing a production of Private Lives. He was designing costumes for it, and it was, I think, 2014. And it was kind of because he hadn't done costumes for a while. And he called me one day. He had gone to 40th Street, which in its day was, he thought, oh, you just go to 40th Street and, he'd have all of his swatches in an hour. And he called me and he said, what happened? I said, okay, some of them are out of business. Others have moved, down.
Yeah.
So yeah. And sadly, the COVID has made some of them go out of business. So it's, it is a shame.
I saw Alan Rickman and Lindsay Duncan in Private Lives on Broadway back in 2003 or 5, something like that. That was a wonderful production and great costume. So that must be fun to do for sure.
I think my husband's costumes were far better, but I'm just.
I'm sure they were.
Okay, so does everybody have their fringe wrapped around? Yes. Okay, so let us continue. Next, I like to just put the needle through the knot. It'll keep it from coming unknotted. I'm going to come in here and trim this off like so. That's our next step. So here we are. We have our thread caught through the knot. We have it cut off. Now, was there a question?
I do have a question.
Yeah.
I had the thicker cord and I didn't tie a knot, so I'm unsure what to do now.
That. So you could just put the needle through the cord itself. As long as you've stitched through the cord when you were securing the foundation, you should be fine. Because see, what we're going to do with that needle and thread that we just put through the knot, that is then going to make the waist of the tassel when we turn the tassel right side up.
Did you snip that, or you're leaving that attached?
Thank you.
We're leaving it attached.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, let me just run this back just a tiny bit here. Yeah. See, you can see there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So here we are. We have our thread caught through the knot. We have everything tied off. Now we want to turn this right side up. And so this is where we sort of separate the strands. And we start distributing everything around. All of the strands distribute evenly around this knob. So if you want to kind of comb it, use just a dull, large-eyed needle. Because you want all of these strands to distribute evenly around this knob. So from here, you can open this up. You want to find your thread. which is right here, and bring that out. Just kind of throw it over your hand like that. It gets it out of the way. And then shake it out. Tight and squeeze. So then what you want to do is you want to bring this thread around and put the needle underneath. And pull.
Can you show that again?
Sure. Because see, the reason you do that is so that if you just took it around, you'd have a little dip, a little V shape. So bringing it around, putting the needle under the thread and taking it the opposite way will make it so that it's level at that point where the thread comes out from under the skirt. Oh, let's see, run it back just.
So you're wrapping it once?
Out. Yeah. Pull tight and squeeze. So then, this is where we are here. Oh. Yeah, so you can see it here. So then what you want to do is you want to bring.
So you didn't go all the way around with that thread?
Yes,
then?
yes. Ultimately, you will. And put the needle. Yeah, because see what we did is we brought it around and then the needle comes up and under this thread here. And then when you pull it, you'll wrap it the opposite way. Did that make sense?
Because the red isn't going all the way around your knob.
Yes, it is. Absolutely.
It is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So let me
Yep.
just take it back just a little bit again.
Sorry, guys.
Not to worry. So then, this is where we are here. Oh. So then what you want to do is you want to bring. See, that's where it comes around.
Okay.
Does that make sense? This thread
Yeah.
around. Good. And put the needle underneath. And pull. And then it goes opposite. And then you can start wrapping. Pull this tightly. Don't be shy. I have a little illustration about what happens here. Yeah, that's what we're doing right there. Now that I have, I'm going to stop here for just a moment. What you can do when you're wrapping this, after you've wrapped it, to make sure that the waist is level, you can pull up on the strands of the skirt to level it out, because it may not be dead level when you first wrap it. You want to get the wrapping on first and then settle the level of the waist once you've wrapped it.
And do you wrap it about 4 or 5 times, or?
Yeah,
Okay.
don't be shy, because this is going to match, and
Right.
it's better to have it strong. So I'm going to stop here and let you get to this point, and then we will continue.
Yeah, those of us who had daughters
Uh-huh.
and who had long hair and wanted a ponytail,
Uh-huh.
we got really used to making it even.
Yeah. So you know exactly what it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
See, I never had daughters.
You
I
have
just
to
had
pull
daughters.
it.
Yeah. But that's exactly. Thank you for that. That's something to explain in the future, because I don't have hair.
Well, I think if you, given the color fringe that you're showing on this video, I think that maybe you need to make Crazy Bella's cousin Itch come down from and visit her, and you could actually make a cousin, because that's what it kind of looks like before you
It
do
does. It really does. Yeah.
Do we knot this off now?
After you've wrapped it, yeah, you'll knot it off.
Just through the threads that we wrapped with.
Just through the threads. That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
See, then the next thing, we're going to be putting a bead waist on the tassel so that the thread is covered, because it's just prettier that way.
Yeah.
And yes, I had to figure this one out on my own, because really I went on, in the gallery, that one hat, you know, I was thinking, oh, I want a really beautiful tassel on that. And then I went to Britex, and they were like, at the time, I remember they were like $100, and this was in 1986.
A lot of money.
And I said, perhaps not. So I figured out
Did
how
you
to.
buy one and take it apart? Is that how you figured this out, or you just found it?
No, I just, I again, window display.
Yeah.
It's Michael, I imagine you do a lot of these kinds of things too. Like if you have to come up with something for a costume for the theater, you have to go, okay, how can we make this look like this? Right. And it may not necessarily be this, but it has to look like this. So this was one of those.
Yeah, those costumes you don't allow outside. Our theater tends to greet people after a show, and I will tell actors, I said, this does not go out in the lobby in public. You must change into something, anything else, but this is for public consumption.
The only thing that's close to that, that I can think of that's close to that is, there was one time a friend of mine in the Bay Area, she procrastinated like crazy. It drove me crazy. And one time she called me. She had started cutting out these 5 bridesmaids dresses on a Saturday for the wedding the following Saturday, which is way, for me, I want to deliver them the Saturday before. And she was stricken with appendicitis and had to have her appendix out. So I got this panicked call on Monday saying, help. I said, okay, I can get there Wednesday. I'll get as far as I can. And so I got there at 10:30 on Wednesday morning, and between 10:30 in the morning and 7:30 in the evening, I had constructed 5 fully lined bridesmaids dresses ready for hems. And I said to her, if you breathe a word to anyone that I touch these, they will find you murdered in your bed.
But they got done.
They got done, yes, and they looked okay. I mean, there was, a fusible, it was definitely not couture, but, it was like, okay, they're bridesmaids dresses. So, those are those things. Yeah, we all have those things that we just say, I don't think I'm going to let anyone see the inside of that. Yeah. But you see, those are things that it's like, that doesn't carry my label. If it carries my label, it has to be right. But, for what I call hack sewing for other people, depending on how much they pay and who, what they need it for. Yeah, I have those things that they don't bear scrutiny. Okay, so do we have our waist on our tassels?
Mine looks like a bad ponytail where you've got kind of greasy hair.
Well, but but it's all practice.
I know. It's just funny though. It's like they were using the analogy of the ponytail, and it's like when you have to take the comb in through the side to smooth it all out. Yeah, that's what mine's doing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I ended up with a big loop after I did my very last knot. So hopefully I can maybe cover that up somehow.
Cover that up. That's.
I don't want to cut it because I'm afraid I'll compromise it.
Well, that's our next step. So now we're gonna put a bead waist on this tassel. Little illustration about what happens here. We did that. Onto the waist of, and some different sizes, pretty much any of them will serve you well. So Nymo thread comes on little tiny cardboard spools, just good to know. Okay, so what I have done here is I've threaded up a needle, and we need to get the needle up onto the waist of the tassel. So I like to come in through underneath. So you're going to put your needle in under the skirt, and then you want the needle to emerge right on, and ideally centered, right on the waist, like so. So then when you pull the stitch closed, voila, the knot hides in under the skirt, so you never ever see it. I'm working with 5/0 seed beads. They come in a variety of colors, different finishes. This is about 1/8 of an inch long if you measure it from end to end on the hole. Once we have the thread anchored, for my tassel, I'm going to pick up 20 of them. It's better to work with even numbers rather than odd because we're setting up some work for later, which I'll talk about in a moment.
It's better to use even rather than odd?
Yes, for this particular thing, yes. I'm threading these up. I'm going to go off camera and I will meet you back here. Okay, I have all 20 strung on the thread. I can put this aside now. So, what we're going to do is we're going to wrap the beads around the waist. Now, what I like to do is I'm going to check here. That's looking a little skimpy, so probably 4 more. Again, I like even numbers, so I'll put 2 on first and see if that fills the gap. It's better to have it a little bit loose. Yeah, we want 2 more. Better a little bit too loose rather than too tight. Too tight's going to cause you problems. Okay, so I now have 24 beads on this strand. So I've wrapped it around the tassel. Actually, I could back that up to 22. No, 24. Okay, so we're going to put the needle through the first one that came out before we couch these to the waist of the tassel. First, going to put the needle into the first bead that you strung on. Here, you're going to couch this stitch down. And really how you do that is you want to sew, and you want and you don't pull this too tight. If you pull it tight, it's going to buckle, it's going to look unattractive. So the object here is that you want to sew this row of beads down, and you're having the thread pass between the beads. And so every 2 or 3 beads, or 2 or 4 beads, every other double, multiple, you're going to come in. So you're stitching this row of beads onto the tassel. You're couching it onto the waist of the tassel so that it won't shift down. It just makes it stable. It makes it sit properly. Yeah. So I'm just going to keep stitching. I'm going to let you watch. So as you can see, again, don't pull it too tightly, because if you pull it tightly, it's going to buckle. So then when we get back to where we started, accuracy is everything here. This sort of thing will bug me if I don't fix it. So I'm going to fix it now. There. Okay. And now you want to just secure your thread. So take a stitch and to hide the end of the thread, you're going to needle back in, separate the strands of the skirt, and you're going to run the needle back like so, and you're going to trim. If it's matching thread, you'll never see that. So here we are, and trim this up a little bit. This little one here, we have to take that off because it's just unattractive. So here we have a bead waist on our single tassel. Once the tassel is finished, I like to do a little steaming and a little trimming to completely finish it up. So with the steaming, since it's rayon, most of the ripples will steam out. Give it a little shake or two, and you can shake it wildly. And as far as maintenance goes, every now and then you'll have to steam out this tassel, especially before wearing. Next, I'm going to talk about trimming the ends. You wait until the very last to trim this tassel. I like to let it hang after I've steamed. It's sort of like cutting hair, and you sneak up on it. You don't just give it one big chop. What I like to do is smooth this down like so. Make a cut. Try to make it even. Then you sort of turn it this way. And you even it up. And 2 or 3 different ways you'll turn it. And you have a good look at it. If you want, give it a little more steam. It's never going to be perfectly even because these will stretch and the ends will fray a little bit over time, but you trim it off. That's really how you finish these ends.
And they don't unravel.
Well, they'll fray a little bit over time, but it's you know, you have to really beat up the tassel to get it to really look raggy. But if it looks a little bit raggy, you just trim it off a little bit.
And the reason that you do the even number is so that you, if you want to cage the ball of the tassel,
yes,
then you've got A to A, B to B, C to C kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. You don't want to make it, you don't want to get fringe that is exactly the size you want. You want to get something slightly longer so that you have a little extra to work with. So here we are. We have our finished tassel. Next, we're going to go and make multi-level tassels. So, questions?
Can you go back and show how you ended that with the beads?
So, hang on one moment here. Let me share the screen again. Oh, did I? Screen sharing, okay. So, let's see, run this back. Yeah. So what we're doing here, we've threaded all the beads on, and we haven't gone through the tassel itself, but we're going to put the needle through the first bead that we strung onto this long strand.
Okay.
And then we couch it down. Did that answer the question?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yep, thank you.
So now let me just get to where. Yeah, multi-layer tassels. Okay, so I'm going to stop for a moment. So is everyone kind of up to speed? Are you with me?
Mm-hmm.
So do we want to make a double layer tassel now?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Okay. So That's where we're going here.
Kenneth, I had a question.
Yes.
As you're stitching the beads around the neck there, was that sort of a back stitch through the beads or more of a running stitch through the beads?
It's like a couching stitch. So what you're doing is you're actually, the stitches are perpendicular to the waist of the tassel. So you're just coming up and between the beads and back into the fabric.
Okay. Between each of them?
About every 3 or 4. You don't have to do them with each one. And the thing is, don't pull the thread too tight because you don't want to get ripples. But what you're doing is you're just kind of couching that down just so it sits nicely and doesn't slide around over time.
Do I run the needle through 3 or 4 beads and then couch?
No.
No,
What you're going to do is you're going to bring the needle, underneath through the waist of the tassel itself, and you come out and the thread is going to go up and over and the stitch is going to fall between the beads. You're sewing the thread that holds the beads. That's what you're doing.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, so other questions? Okay, so multiple layer tassels. Next, we have multiple layer tassels because they're cool. When you have a multiple layer tassel, you still have the cord and the knob and the waist. But how I define it is the top layer is layer 1. The next layer down would be layer 2. And if we even had a third layer, which I've done before, that would be layer 3. This tassel constructs a little differently than the basic tassel. That's why I treat it in a separate section. For the multiple layer tassel, I'm going to make a double layer tassel. And when you're choosing the fringe, you want to choose fringe that is progressively shorter as the layers stack up. You can see here, the red fringe, which is going to be our top layer, is shorter than the second layer, which is going to be the off-white. For this tassel, we will be using a total of 16 inches of fringe, as in the first tassel, but we divide it up differently. The red fringe, which is going to be the top layer, has a longer amount of fringe. And so we're going to measure out and cut 9 inches.
9 inches?
Yes, 9 inches for the top layer.
Would there be a difference if it's the narrower version?
No,
not the wide
exactly the same.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. Which is underneath, we're going to measure out 7 inches. So 9 plus 7 equals 16. Now you may ask, why is the top layer longer? And that is because the top layer has more circumference to distribute around than the lower layer, so it needs a longer amount of fringe. So now we have our fringes cut. I will take these off camera and unravel the chain stitch. We will proceed to the next step.
Because I was late,
Uh-huh.
could you explain the unraveling the chain stitch thing to me?
Okay, well, they're on the lower, at the end of the strands.
Oh, they're sewn together.
Yeah, there's the foundation at the top, but at the lower end of the fringe, there is, and it's generally a contrasting color. It's chain stitches that are just carrier stitches that just,
Yeah.
it makes it so that they can wind it on a bolt. It's easier to unravel that before you try to make the tassel than if you were to leave it intact until you did the tassel.
Mine was cheap. Cheap on Amazon.
It's okay. It's okay. Well, you see, it saved you a step. Okay.
I've bought the nice fringe before, and when I was looking at it, I'm going, this doesn't look right to me.
Yeah. So yeah, that's what that means with the chain stitch. Okay. So now, to begin, we're using our tassel that we made earlier, and I've taped and trimmed the end of the cord just to clean it up, because this end is where we're going to make our double tassel. Threaded up a needle, and this one starts a little differently. You have 2 layers, whereas in the last time we started and put the fringe on facing opposite the direction that the tassel was going to hang when it was finished. But in this one, the first layer goes on facing the direction it will hang.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Thread a needle, and that's the bottom layer.
Yes, that's the bottom layer. The next layer will go on upside down, but to get the first one, this is how you set it up.
Okay.
And whip stitch this and fairly securely to the end of the tassel. Sounds like someone's having some fun there. Again, it doesn't have to be pretty. It just has to be sewn.
Well, I'm laughing at the fairly securely comment.
Oh, what do you mean?
Yeah. Well, no, it's true. Yeah, you don't. It's not something you want to in the middle of a fancy ball or something, and you spin around, and there goes your tassel, and
yeah,
there goes your tassel.
That's deeply unfortunate. So yeah. After we've wrapped this.
This is, I'm sorry, I'm a little behind. This is the top?
No, this is the lower level, the
lower level.
Yeah. And so that one, as you can see, is stitched hanging in the direction where it's upright.
Kevin, is that a reason that you don't have a knot in this one, or just that because you taped it instead?
I find on this one having a knot there, it creates a little
too much
bulk. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I find just stitching it works really well.
Okay.
But it's secure. So now trim the thread, and we're ready for the next step.
Sorry, this is the short or the long layer?
This is the longer layer. Yeah, the shorter layer will go on top of this. Now, did I send you all the handout for this?
No.
So okay, well, I will email that this evening. And wrap, you can wind it clockwise, counterclockwise, doesn't matter. So what we're doing is we're winding this so that the top edges of the foundation line up. And just keep winding and winding. And here we are. And now we're going to sew a few stitches to secure it. This is looking a little bit familiar because we kind of did a similar thing last time. So now we have stitched the end so it doesn't unwind, and then we want to stitch through. Make sure you catch the cord. Make sure that these top edges line up. And you stitch through several times. You're going to be doing some more stitching before this is over, but don't be shy on your stitching. You don't want this thing to pull loose. Okay, so we've stitched through several times. You can trim your thread. So it's going to hang, as you can see. We'll turn that off. That's not terribly attractive. This is not going to be seen, so don't go don't go for perfection in this stitching. As long as it's secure, it doesn't have to be pretty. So the tassel is going to hang like so. This is the lower layer. The next step is going to be adding the other fringe to the upper layer. Okay, so I'm going to stop here and let you all get to that point.
I've lost my needle and thread in the middle of the fringe.
Oh,
there it is. Okay.
See, that's where having a magnet handy is helpful.
It was exactly the same length as the fringe. I found it. All right, there we go.
So are we all having fun?
We are.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is good. Yeah.
One of the things I was, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Just the cost savings is incredible.
Well, you know, the other thing about this, and because there are different ways of making tassels. There's one way where you wind the whatever around a card and then you tie one side of it and clip the other one. Then you make the waist. The drawback about that is you can pull the strands loose and eventually that tassel could start looking really stingy. The strands are there. They are not going anywhere. They are there for the life of the piece. So yeah, it's a good one.
And it's one of the things I was going to say about the couching.
Mm-hmm.
As I liken it to like the turret of a castle, well, at the top of the wall of a castle.
Okay.
Let's see if I can get it.
Like yeah. That. Okay. Yeah.
So that you can see the solid lines of the stitching line and the circles were just the beads.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it's like the top of a castle wall.
Okay.
In a way.
That's a good way of looking at it.
Or dental molding.
Right. Yeah, let's talk about dental procedures. I'm going to have a
very... No. I mean like woodwork.
Yeah. Okay.
You know.
Yeah. Well, you see, that's what my mind is right now. Is like
oh no.
Well, you know, I'm not going to bore you with the details, but it's one of those like, oh, that's going to hurt. Okay. So I said to my husband, he was at his doctor. I said, you need to get a prescription for Valium, because that's the only way I can sit still in a dentist chair is if I have Valium. So yeah, he looked at me like I was some sort of crazy person. I said, no, honey, do this for me, please. If you love me, you'll do it. So, okay. So now back to the story. Here we are, ready to add the other fringe. Now, that's the direction the tassel will hang. And so the lower layers go on. If you were to make a 3-layer tassel, you would stack another layer on top of this facing the same direction. But the top layer, is opposite. So what you're going to do here is you're going to lay these and see how they face opposite. That's what you want to do. That's what you're looking for. And so I'm going to sew the end. And again, this bright orange stitching is really for demonstration purposes. If you want to color match everything, that is, I think, a better idea. So now we have sewn that end to the fringe. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to line up the top edge of the red fringe with the lower edge of the white fringe, the foundations. So the foundations are going to sit one on top of the other.
Same thing with 3 layers. You line it up right exactly like you're lining this one.
Absolutely, yes.
But in 3 layers, the second layer, the middle layer is the same direction as the longest layer. So
that's absolutely correct. And so if you're looking for, to get the 16 inches of fringe, it's 3 inches for the longest, the longest layer, 5 inches for the next layer up, and then 8 inches for the top layer. So you'll still have a total of 16 inches. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
To wrap it. Come in here with the needle and thread. I just left it attached. You could tie it off and start over if you wish. Anything to alleviate confusion. So now, again, as before, we're going to sew the end of this fringe. And then stitch through this whole mass just to secure it. This is where having a good long needle is going to help you out here, especially if it's a rather thick knob on the tassel. But don't forget this stitching. This stitching is going to keep it from pulling loose, because you don't want this tassel to pull loose over the life of the garment. That would be sad. Okay, I think we have plenty here. And trim. So here, this is what we're looking at. So here we are with both fringes stitched down. Now, we want to snug the red strands up against the cord, sort of like we did when we made the single layer tassel. So you're going to anchor your thread here, and then you want to wind it. And the thing to just be very aware of is tighten it up. Don't worry about how far off or how far away from the foundation it sits. You just want to really wrap that up. Now, some people skip this step, and if you skip the step, what's going to happen is the strands will not be clamped tightly against the cord, and it's just going to look bad. So stitch that together, stitch that to tie it off, and then trim the thread. If it's a little bit wonky, you can sort of massage it so that everything is symmetrical, because this is actually going to form the knob for the tassel. So I'm going to stop there to let you get to that point.
Thank you.
So now, looking at the time, because I had planned we could to go to 9 o'clock. So what I was thinking is, once we finish with this, I'll kind of play the video of the bead cage, and then we can all kind of chat amongst ourselves, because I think everyone is curious about everyone else here. Because I'd like to hear about some of you too. Some of you I know, some of our familiar faces, others not so familiar. Meredith, I love that color hair.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's become my thing, I guess.
You know, hey, I tried it. I think I told you the story. I tried it. It didn't work very well with me, but I've had pretty much every hair color in my time.
I've only done the purple, actually.
Well, I've had, let's see, I had purple, I had red. Red is not a good color on me. I've had Superman blue black, strawberry blonde. There's this color called Bordeaux. back in my days at Macy's, there were these things. It was a product called cellophane. So it was. Remember Yeah. Okay. You know what I'm talking about. Yeah. Yeah. Cellophane. It was Bordeaux, and my husband at the time was colorblind, and he thought I was just punking him. He thought that my hair wasn't really Bordeaux, but I was just saying that because he was colorblind. But yeah, he was colorblind. Bless his heart.
I used to joke with my husband that I was going to dye my hair all these crazy colors. And, and I never did it. And finally I did. And he came home and it was purple. And he's like, oh my God, I love it. You have to keep it that way.
Well, there you go.
I'm like, okay.
Okay. So let us, our questions, we good? So let's finish this tassel, shall we? Play. Ah, here we are. Now we're ready to close the tassel. So it looks like this right now. Threaded another needle, and you want to just anchor that thread right about there. You want it to be as close to the waist of the tassel as you can get it. And from here, you're going to turn this right side up. You have to kind of fight with it a little bit, but that's okay. It doesn't look perfect right away. You just have to style it a little bit. It's kind of like styling hair, I guess. And so the object here, when you're dressing these strands to make everything look nice, you want to evenly distribute them around the circumference of the tassel. So then I like to grab it like so, give it a little tug, and so then, as we did on the single tassel, we're going to come here. Now, people have asked me, why do you do this little move? Why don't you just wrap it? What I have found is that if you just start wrapping it, you're going to get a little V-shaped point there. And so bringing it around, catching it, and then going the opposite way, when you pull it and wrap it in the other direction, you're less likely to see any kind of little raised V there. So now, again, what we want to do here is to wrap the thread around the waist of the tassel. So once you've, one more wrap there, then, okay. So once you've wrapped that, then you can secure it, knock the thread off. And finally, to bury the end, you're going to put the needle in at the waist, have it emerge out under the skirt, then trim your thread. And so now here, what you can do is just kind of style these things, the strands around. If it's looking a little high on one side or low on another side, you can kind of shift everything over and around. But there you have the double layer tassel. Next, I'm going to talk about steaming and trimming because it's a little different than the basic tassel. Here we have the tassel ready for steaming and for trimming. So first, get some steam. Let it cool off a little bit. So, trimming the top layer is a little different than the under layer. So what I like to do is separate the top layer out from the under layers. And sometimes you have to kind of play with it a little bit. We are, okay. So I take this, put it up over here. So then, like trimming the basic tassel, it's like trimming hair. You cut it evenly as you can get. Try to make it as even as possible. Not going to be perfect the first cut. So then once you have this layer trimmed, then bring the under layer. And as you're looking, you see a few stragglers on the upper layer. Trim them. Okay. Feels like it's going downhill just a tiny bit there. And then lower layer, you trim off. And these lengths are up to you. As the designer, you can decide longer, shorter. Okay then, so once we have that trimmed, we have our double layer of tassels. So, questions?
So on that last, on the tassel that you just showed in passing very quickly.
Yeah.
You didn't do beads with it, you just did a cord with it?
Yeah. Sometimes you can do cords. Yeah.
And then how do you finish off the cord?
I bury the cords inside, like I bury
yeah.
it. Yeah.
Okay, and I've got another one too. If you want to make a standalone tassel, and you just, you like tassels and you want to make a standalone, how do you do the loop for the tassel?
Well, if you want to loop, I would just, sew the two ends of the thread together and then put the tassel on that.
Okay, so it wouldn't be too thick.
You might want to experiment with it. I wouldn't use a really thick cord. If if you want to loop, you want something like shoelace. That would be thinner.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thanks.
Okay. So questions. Is everyone's brain full?
This is really fun for me. It's a whole new passion. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, what I love about all this is, you could kind of go into make a whole career out of making tassels or beadwork or anything like that. It's good to be aware of this.
Buy enough of this stuff in different colors, better prices.
Better prices. That's the best thing.
I'll have a whole selection. You need specialty tassels? Let me know.
Yeah. Okay. So now, so we're at 8:36 now. I think what I might do is just send you the link for the bead cage, and you can look at that at your leisure. And I will also send you the handout for this too, so that you have all of, because you can see that the illustrations came from something. So at this point, who would like to introduce themselves and say a little bit about yourself? Let's start with Michael.
Michael, before you start, I have to thank you for the hair iron.
Isn't that great? It's brilliant.
It's fabulous.
Good.
A friend of mine was like, "Why are you buying a flat iron?" Like,
why not?
Well, thank you for that.
Oh, you're very welcome. So yeah, I am actually a retired oncology nurse case manager.
Wow.
And I have done theater all my life, well, since high school on, and got into theater in many aspects, including costuming. My mom, I learned sewing from my mom when I was 5 and 6, and I hung around her, and for some reason she always spilled her pins, and I was always picking up her pins. And then she started teaching me, and so I learned all that. And then through high school and on, and I just started picking up the costuming aspect, and through college did some, and so that's what I was doing more of the past couple of years. And it's hard on top of work. So retiring actually gave me more time, gave me more time to do costume stuff. But right now, the entire theatrical world is shut down.
Yeah.
So nothing's happening. I know a lot of people who've rearranged their studios, and so I just sit at home by myself and do all my sewing, and I've been doing a lot of embroidery, tons of embroidery actually, hand embroidery over the past year.
I know, it's been a year.
Yeah, it's
wow.
Not an anniversary I'm really excited about.
Yeah.
But yeah, I tend to specialize because of the costuming and stuff. I tend to specialize in one-offs, bigger showpieces, specialty items, and men.
Okay.
Because in the whole world of in costumes, it's fun to sew for women. Women have some great stuff. They get some great, but not everybody wants to deal with male costume stuff, which can be just kind of plain. Oh, kitty.
So, Sharon, tell us a little about yourself.
So I am actually an audiologist.
Okay.
So that's like my life at this moment. But I have been, if any of you don't know, it's hearing evaluations, hearing aids. So I have not been, even though we had lockdown and everything, I still never quit working and still never had the time to organize my crafty self or whatever. But so I'm in Florida, in the Tampa Bay area, and I love sewing, knitting, beading, embroidery, dyeing, felting, all different aspects, but I think sewing most of all. And just since I was a kid, but just never have enough time. So I'm so thankful that you're doing these classes. Because of not being able to travel, although I do, I've wanted to travel to take one of your classes for a zillion years. And I've done other classes in prior years on pattern review and whatnot. But this has been great, and I hope you do more. And I love your style. So thank you so much.
Thank you. You're very kind to say that. So let's see, Christy, tell us a little about yourself.
All right, I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I am a social worker by trade, but I have spent all of my life in tech and in biotech, drug discovery. So I've sewn since I was about 5 or 6, watching The Neighbor. And then my mother sewed because she had 4 daughters and felt she really had to.
Yeah.
But my neighbor sewed because she loved to sew and embroider. So that got me started. And I've been sewing ever since. I wanted to touch bases with Michael because we live in the same geographical area, and my serger, I locked up my serger last week, and I need to take it for repair. And I'm just in a panic because it's a wonderful machine. I have no idea what happened. But my focus in sewing is, and has been for probably 30 years, is smocking and embroidery of infant and children's wear. But my reason for these classes is I want to branch out to adult women's wear. So for myself and for friends, and the kids are growing up.
Yeah, they'll be adults soon.
Yeah, so that's about it. But I'll send a message to Michael on the chat and see who he uses for a repair. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So now, Joyce, tell us about yourself.
Hi, I'm in Eastern Idaho. So I retired about a year ago, as did my husband. And we had started building a house, which was finished last August. So I'm an architect by trade. For sewing, my mother taught me when I was 11, because it was one of those things I needed to know to be a good wife and mother, which was all my early training was devoted to that. So, and I just kept taking it further and further. I started doing more tailoring stuff around 28. And then a few years ago, my husband and I were watching the old Twilight Zone series, the original one. And there's one episode that has Julie Newmar as the devil, and she's leaning against a desk wearing a suit. And my husband says, "Would you wear a suit like that?" And I said, "Yes, that's a Chanel suit." And he said, "Well, what's so special about that?" And I thought, I don't know. So I started doing research on that, and he was looking up used ones to see, you know, can he buy me one? And I said, you know, I'm going to try making one. And so I did, and I loved the technique. And so I started doing more things with embellishments, which was what brought me to your course. Now, being an architect, suddenly I also got busy, because one thing this pandemic has done is people have started buying lots in remote areas because they want to get away from cities. And so suddenly there's a lot of work for architects, and I'm trying not to do work because I want to sew. So pretty much that's my story in a nutshell.
Well, I'm glad you're here. So now, so Meredith.
Oh, okay. Well, this is a different path for most people. I'm a traditional silversmith by trade. And I hurt my hand and couldn't smith anymore. Started photography, wanted to do a project in Russia. So I was learning Russian and asked the guidance counselor what fun class was just before or just after Russian, because I didn't want to travel to the university for just this class, and it was sewing.
Okay.
So that's how I had never sewn before at that point, and did so very much for the next 5-6 years or something, and then got into it more. I was doing more photography, and even with my metal work, if I could make something harder, I would. It's just my nature. And so I took a class in couture sewing, and I was like, this is persnickety enough for me. And so, so I've gone down that rabbit hole. So that's where I'm at now.
Well, there you go. Thank you. I'm glad you
came.
came.
And I don't speak Russian.
Oh, well. Oh, well. Okay, so let's see now, Meredith Platt, how are you?
I'm fine. It's actually Pyatt.
Sorry.
That's all right. It's just so unusual to have two Merediths in a class.
It's true, yeah.
No matter what the size. And we both spell it the same way. So
yeah,
the correct way.
Yes.
Well, the Southerners are the ones that spell it wrong. The Southerners spell it MERIDETH.
Yeah, well, it's a long story. Anyway, I am currently in North Carolina. I grew up in Florida. And I retired basically at the end of 2019, and was going to do all sorts of fun things like travel, et cetera, et cetera. And luckily I said, you should just wait a year, and good thing so I didn't actually travel, wasn't going to, but still, it's been a weird retirement. I started sewing when I was 10, I made a skirt. I remember it. And I've been sewing on and off since then, which is, let's just say I'm almost eligible for a shot. Almost. But with work, I was in finance. Most recently I was controller at the community, at our local community foundation. I just never had, I've had time and not time. And then the last few years, my husband was ill. He passed away. And I perked up when Michael said he was an oncology nurse because Gary had lymphoma. So anyway, but now I have all the time in the world and don't get anything done. So I need to remodel my house and things like that. But this has been great fun. Of course, I've followed Kenneth for years. And this has been a great opportunity because I just never got around to doing you in person. You know, doing a class in person.
Yes.
Sorry.
Okay.
I am close to mulberry silks.
Yes.
But I've been having back trouble lately, or the last few years, and couldn't do a multi-day thing. I couldn't stand by the last few days, but it's better. And so maybe if we ever get out in the world again, we'll do that.
And we will.
But I do like, I've taken a lot of very interesting things that I wouldn't have normally done.
Yeah.
So.
Well, thank you.
Yeah,
So
thank
now,
you.
Anne-Marie, tell us about yourself.
Oh, I just turned my video off. There we go.
Yes. Anne-Marie and Catherine are friends, as I understand.
Yeah, I live in New Jersey, close to New York. I usually describe it as in spitting distance of the George Washington Bridge.
Okay.
And I've spent all of my professional career in some form of the home sewing industry. I started out working for 10 years with Vogue and Butterick Patterns. And then I went out on my own and did a lot of writing. I've actually written for almost everybody except Threads magazine.
Well, you should correct that.
Maybe, we'll see. I've done, I used to be a regular columnist for Sew News magazine, and I wrote for the 2 update newsletters that they had for years, and for the publications that Vogue and Butterick put out. And I've written a couple of sewing books. But the project that's most near and dear to my heart is an organization called the American Sewing Guild. And when I went on my own, the Home Sewing Association, which was an existing trade association that sponsored it, hired me to help them start it. And I did that for a couple of years. And then I went on and did other things. And then I came back to them as editor of their Notions magazine when it was a print edition, which unfortunately about a year and a half or 2 years ago, they had, for many, many reasons, we had to disband the print edition. So I don't do that anymore, but I loved doing that. And I love taking courses and I love learning new things. And I'm not sure what I'll ever do with what Kenneth is teaching, but you never know, you know? And I just find it, it's not, I've been fortunate. It's not only been a profession, but it's been therapy. You know, I just, not too many people get to make a living doing what they love. And I've gotten to do that. And I'm very grateful.
Yes. Well,
so that's me. And I followed Kenneth for years. And I guess I first met him years ago when he spoke at a ASG conference. I can't even remember where we were, but you know,
because people say, "Oh, I saw you at this place." I'm like, I can't remember. You know?
yeah.
But I remember faces, but I may not remember places. But
yeah, I you know, but anyway, this has been fun. I really, probably like a lot of you, I started COVID with you know, a project list this long and maybe done 3 of them.
Yeah.
I don't know where the time goes, but I've been busy. So that's me.
Great. So now, Renee, tell us about yourself.
Let's see. I have only been sewing a lot since maybe 7 years ago. My daughter's in ballet and they require parents to volunteer. And so I knew a little bit of hand sewing at the time. So they roped me into doing a million little ribbon flowers. And then from there, they're like, oh, you have a sewing machine, you might as well learn how to use it. Yeah. So that's where it went. And so lately I've been making tutus. There's been some competitions going on still. So and there's my ballerina who wants a bun done, and she's not going to get one right now. So yeah, I've been doing tutus for competitions and a couple of odds and ends projects here and there. Someone wanted a Korean inspired outfit that I've been working on. And
is that what's behind you?
Over here, it's on a child form because I'm using the other one, but yeah. I don't know if you can see it very well.
Yeah, the neckline is very Korean.
It goes with a dress that's over here. With Hamilton Spencer jacket that Costume Coalition put out.
Very cool.
Yeah. So she's my.
Oh, nice.
Oh, beautiful.
So yeah, some theater stuff mixed in there and mostly ballet though.
Well, great. Thank you. So now Selena.
Hi, everybody. I am from the South. I grew up in North Georgia. I now live in Alabama, and I've lived here for a long time. I am a retired teacher. I started out my career in high school and I went, no, I don't like that. So I moved all the way down to kindergarten. And I was a kindergarten teacher for about 15 years. Then I became a reading specialist in my school. And then I was lucky enough to be on the writing team for English language learner textbooks for Ethiopian kids. So that was really interesting. Then
Is there a large Ethiopian population there?
Pardon?
Is there a large Ethiopian population in Alabama?
No, I went to Ethiopia.
Oh.
Yeah, it was for Ethiopia.
Wow.
So I went there. So anyway, as far as my sewing goes, I can't remember exactly when I started sewing. I know I still have my first sewing machine, which was a baby Singer. And it only did the chain stitch. It doesn't work anymore, but I can't throw it away.
No.
So, and I still have my Chatty Cathy doll where I designed an outfit for her and I sewed it, and it was a vest and it had the little fake pockets in the skirt, and it was a lot of fun to do. And I, when I became a mother, I sewed a lot for my kids. In fact, when my younger daughter was in kindergarten, her dress was 1 layer long, and then in first grade it was the 2nd layer, and in the second grade it was the 3rd layer, because she really liked that dress. Okay. So I just kept doing it. I'm a big Bernina lover, although I do have a baby lock serger, so I like that. My husband kids me and says that in our house, the sewing room is the most expensive room in the whole house. So I like machine embroidery. I like learning new things. I have several of your books over there. And I just, right now with COVID, I've really enjoyed cooking new things, and I'm really enjoying this class and learning new things. So I can see, okay, I'm going to have to make the granddaughter some tassels, and so, and she likes the sparkly, fun stuff. So I'm sure I'm going to have to embellish something for her.
Well, good. Well, thank you. So now, Lori, tell us about yourself.
I am from the north. I'm from Canada. I live in a little tiny town called Tamworth, Ontario, which is just sort of north of Kingston, if anybody knows where that is. I'm about 3 hours from Toronto and 2.5 hours from Ottawa, almost exactly in the middle. We're in the middle of nowhere. I am a veterinarian. My husband is a dairy farmer, so we get up at 5 o'clock in the morning every morning, and I have a 6-year-old son and a puppy. And I have been sewing since I was 13 years old. I'm nearly 50. And I learned to sew in home ec in grade 7 or so. And I sewed the worst pair of white jogging pants that didn't go over my bum. And I know now, after learning how to fit, why? Because my bum is low. It's there. It's just down low. And so you sort of have to have more real estate to cover it. Yes. And I sew my own clothes. I don't sew for anybody except my husband and my 3 stepkids and my own son. If hard pressed, I'll make something for my mother, but I don't sew professionally at all. I just sew for myself. And I don't even know where I found Kenneth. I think probably in Threads magazine, and then somehow I found you on, I don't even know how I found you on Instagram, but that's where I found you. And I just wanted to take this class because it just seemed like something fun and artistic and a way to have 2 hours to myself on Wednesday night. Which sounds horrible, but when you have and I have my own business, and we worked hell for leather all the way through COVID, and we're still busy, which I'm grateful for. But you know, I'm a one-man show, and when it ramps up again in a month, I don't know what I'm going to do. But that's okay. I'm not going to complain about having a business that's succeeding, especially in COVID.
Well, good. Thank you. So now, Catherine, last but not least.
Am I the last Catherine?
Yeah, you're the last Catherine, yes.
Oh, I've enjoyed the stories. I feel like I'm with kindred spirits, which we always feel that way when we're together. I was just thinking, if we had to fill out a survey on how we met Kenneth, I don't even know where. I've lived all over the country. And when I lived in Los Angeles, I think I started going up to sewing workshop. And I remember pulling up with Fred and a busload of ladies, small bus full of ladies. And you were outside to kind of waiting on us, but getting your day started. And you had that adorable little poodle.
Oh, well, she's a Cocker Spaniel, but yeah.
Was it a Cocker Spaniel? Okay, my brain still says poodle.
Okay. Well, she's fluffy. You know, I never cut her like
she was fluffy.
Yeah.
And she had the most beautiful rhinestone collar. And you told us the story of searching high and low for those. They had to be the correct rhinestones.
Yes.
Crystals. And I think I did a couple of visits to your studio there. So I felt like I really understood your aesthetic, and you were working with your pliers on, kind of smocking up the organza back then.
Yeah.
The secret techniques.
Yes.
And I've lived all over the country, but the beauty of, I have to, pitch my American Sewing Guild, but the beauty is when I worked a stressful job in advertising, and as I transferred around the country with my husband, those sewing classes always, I would bump into the same people. So I met Anne-Marie, I don't know how many years ago, 10, 15 years ago. And so like schoolgirls, we'd always sit next to each other and go out to dinner and drink wine. And I think we've all missed that the last year and a half.
Yeah.
So this has been just wonderful. And Kenneth, I love your department store stories, because I was a fashion merchandising major graduating in 80, just as all the department stores were being bought up.
Yeah.
And consolidated and basically ruined. So I went into advertising, but the joy of that was I traveled. I ended up working for large papers like Los Angeles Times and the Washington Post. Wow. Sorry, I've got allergy lungs here today in the South, pollen lungs. But I would come home with suitcases of fabric from all of these cities, and that habit has not stopped. I have no problem shopping online and go to Europe as often as I can. Before I forget, and I'm rambling, for 902, when I was in Paris, is this showing up?
Yes.
Yes.
I bought a tassel kit from a very famous, oh, well, it's a, it looks like a can girl skirt when you see it on the, and I haven't opened it because I've kind of kept this kit as a souvenir, but since my supplies fell through for tonight, I may have to open up that kit and one day come to New York and have Kenneth put this thing together for me. Okay. But anyway, I've loved these sessions. I think it's a silver lining to our cloud. I'm getting vaccinated tomorrow.
Yay.
In the new high risk group. Thank goodness I'm not quite old enough for the first category. So I think things are looking better, and I hope we all see each other soon.
Yes, absolutely.
I know a lot of you from other groups, Susan Couchie's group, and having a great time. Thank you.
Okay.
Kenneth, Deb hasn't talked.
Where is Deb? There you are. Hi. So tell us about you.
I have been sewing since I was 4.5. A babysitter put a piece of green and white gingham in my hand, some red buttons, thread, showed me how to thread it, and said to me, sew these on and make a face. And that was the beginning. And I actually just moved back to my hometown a 1.5 years ago and caught back up with her, found her through Facebook. So that's kind of funny. She still remembers that. And my father's parents both came from Italy. They were both, my grandfather was actually trained at Brooks Brothers. He started as a sweeper when he was 12 years old. Like Alice and I always say, our grandparents probably walked in the same streets because he lived down on Mulberry Street. My grandmother came a little bit later. She was also a seamstress. So I think it's just kind of in the blood. My dad always said they were on my shoulder when I was a kid. It was easy for you. So my first sewing machine was an industrial avocado green colored white, heaviest sewing machine in the world. It was a great machine. I wish I still had that machine actually. And then I've just sewed my whole life. I always say with all my education, I be sitting in front of a sewing machine, which I'm sure my grandparents rolled over in their grave. All they wanted was their kids and their grandchildren to go to college. But now I'm retired, so I can sew. Unfortunately, I got breast cancer 1.5 years ago when I was still living in Portland. So that kind of messed me moving back east. I've been in Portland for 40 years. And so I finally got through that and I moved and found a great place with a great big lower level. So I have a really nice big studio space because it's amazing how much stuff you can collect in 55 years. And I just love the space. And I've first time I had a class, the only time I had a class with Kenneth was actually in Novi, Michigan. And I took a leather class from you. Really fun. And I was doing quilting about 2000 when my son was young. I kind of started that and got really into it, both traditional and art quilting. And the lady that's from North Carolina may know Hollis Shadowling, and I took a 10-year class with her. She's a great internationally known art quilter. And then I thought, oh, I kind of want to get back into garment sewing. And my best friend said, I want to take this class from Susan Calgie. This is like 10 years ago. I said, okay, fine, I'll do it with you. And she didn't really know how to sew. And she said, I'll only do it if you do it, because then you can sit next to me and tell me what I'm doing. I said, okay. And of course, we fell in love with Susan and I've been doing that. So it's just, it's always the happiness in my life. Unfortunately, I went through a lot of arthritis and trigger finger and cysts on my hands, and finally got through all the surgeries and got shots. And now it's like, I feel like I have 22-year-old hands again. It's so great. Like, I can do this. I had to take a little bit of a break from sewing, and it was really, really hard. Meredith and I have known each other. Meredith Bowe and I have known each other for the last 3 years. We met in a class in Portland, Oregon, where I was for 39 years. So we've been good buds for 4 years too. So it's always nice. I always say the quilting and the sewing community is always very nice.
I think so.
See, Deb is the reason I'm taking this class.
Well, thank you.
She told me I had to sign up.
Okay. Well, thank you, Deb. I appreciate that. She listens to my podcast.
I love your podcast. And I love your book too. I mean, your podcasts get me through. I'm having a bad day. I just listen to Kenneth's podcast and I feel so much better afterwards, because I'm usually laughing so hard I can't breathe. So that's always good.
Yeah, well,
I recommend them highly.
Every now and then there's a thoughtful one. Actually, there's one that's going around in my mind right now. Was like, do I write about this now or not? It's, it involves a suicide, not mine, obviously. So, but anyway, so.
Yeah.
Okay,
But those stories need to be told too. And I always find them very, very thoughtful. And I remember the first time when I listened to your book and I just thought, oh my God, I feel like I know this, like we lived parallel lives that we should have been living together, kind of a thing. And
yeah. Well, a lot of
Very
people
fun.
in the 80s, and I was one of them. Yes. Okay, folks, this has been lovely.
Yay.
So I will download the recording and I will send you all the links. And then if you want to make a bead page, that video will be in there. And I will also send you the handout for this as well. So you have some printed matter of all of this.
So Kenneth, I've just got a quick question.
Yeah.
During the first class, you said that these videos will only be available for 6 weeks. Is that still true?
The Zoom videos are going to be available for 6 weeks. But the links
but the tutorials will still be available.
Tutorials live on an unlisted channel on YouTube. So what I would say is please don't pass them around because I have to make money at this. But yeah, those, because I use those also for FIT because I have to teach them. And so as long as I can keep them kind of a lid on them so it's unlisted, they'll be there. Okay.
So the Zoom classes will be there. Is it like 6 weeks from the first one?
It's gonna be 6 weeks from the last one.
Okay.
I just think that's fair. Yeah. And so, but after that, I guess, I have to kind of keep, there's a certain number that you can run, it's like, yeah. But
nothing in life is free.
That's true. Yeah. So that's what that's all about.
Okay.
That was going to be my question too. And do you have other things in the pipeline, other classes?
Well, I'm looking at, like maybe like 3 installment classes, like you could, like 3 different pockets. So you could tune into one, or you could take all 3. I've got to look at my calendar to kind of figure out, okay, what is the next, because I've got a ton of these videos that, I, as much as I kind of kvetched about it, it was like, there's a part of me going, you know what, you can sell these later. And so, so I've got to kind of look at my calendar. But if you tune in on Instagram and I have your email now because, you're so I can send emails to people like, okay, these are the offerings so that you'll know what I'm doing coming up.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, folks.
Thanks. See you next week.
Thank you.
Bye, Deb.
Good night.
Thank you.
Bye, Meredith. Bye,
Bye, all.
Bye.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you.